Okay, well, let's get started with our program today. Welcome everybody to 78 Species, a conversation with artist and biologist Larissa Babicz. I am Lishka Arata, Point Blue Communications Manager, Art and Science Catalyzer, and your host for today's program. We have a great event in store today. I'll be interviewing Larissa about an amazing piece of ecological art that she recently created, and I'll open it up to all of you for Q&A at the end. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Point Blue and why we're having this event in the first place. So for those of you who are new to us, Point Blue is a nonprofit organization dedicated to conserving birds, other wildlife, and ecosystems through science, partnership, and outreach. We were founded in 1965 as the Point Reyes Bird Observatory, and today we're based in Petaluma, California, and have around 160 scientists working throughout the state, from the Sierra to the sea, as well as along the Pacific Flyway from Alaska to Chile, and as far as Antarctica, studying Adelie penguins in the Ross Sea. Our central goal presently is to address the challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss using nature-based solutions and innovative, collaborative, and inclusive approaches. So how does art fit into all of this, you might ask? And some of you probably have some ideas on how it fits in. As a conservation organization, we need to engage more people in solutions to climate change and biodiversity loss. We need to employ new creative approaches in order to increase the pace and scale of change needed to shift course towards a healthier future for all. Because art can reach us on a deeper emotional level and convey complex issues beyond our powers of verbal language, it's a really effective way to communicate, formulate, and engage in solutions. Our communications, leadership, and programmatic teams are devoting energy to grow these impactful art and science partnerships. And we believe that through these efforts, the world will become a more inspiring and healthy place for all living organisms. So today we're highlighting an artist and a project that came out of Point Blue's Palomarin Field Station, which is at the southern end of the Point Reyes National Seashore. And we've been studying the bird community at this site and training early career scientists since 1966. And Larissa Babicz came to the station as an apprentice in the spring of 2022. And after she moved on, she began to work on the piece that we're going to delve into today. Larissa is an avid birder and biologist, and through her art, she hopes to share with you the beauty and incredible diversity of our planet so that we'll be more motivated to protect these vital treasures. She's been doing art since she was a little girl, mostly drawing animals. And in college, she studied biology, and she's currently traveling the country and I believe the world doing seasonal biological fieldwork and art. She was most recently in Alaska, and we're lucky enough that she's actually returning to Point Blue. She'll be working on the Farallon Islands this fall, and she'll be coming back to Palomarin in the winter. So you could even go visit her and meet the artist in person. All right, so let's get started with this interview and then on to some Q&A with all of you. As we go along, please feel free to share questions you have through the Q&A function if you're joining us on Zoom. And if you're joining us via Facebook, go ahead and put your questions in the chat. And Zach Warno, our communications director, is going to be keeping an eye on our Facebook live stream chat, and he's going to be sharing those questions over to the Zoom. And we'll try to get to as many questions as possible in the Q&A. Thanks, Zach, for doing that. All right. So welcome, Larissa. So happy to have you here.
Thanks. I'm really happy to be here.
Yay. All right. So let's get into our interview here. The very first question I have is kind of, the standard question that you want to know about any art piece. Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for this piece, the Birds of Palomarin, and kind of the process that you went through to create the piece?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of a big question, really. I'm gonna kind of start off by saying kind of what we did at Palo. So Palomarin is it's mostly a bird banding station where early career scientists can go and receive a whole lot of training on how to handle birds safely, to learn about bird ecology, also a lot about how to run a station and what goes into that, and also just conservation science in general, getting some ideas for the future, like what do you want to focus on in your future career. And also for me on a more personal level, this was also the first time that I was really with a bunch of people that were like me and that I was really accepted for who I am as a bird nerd and art person. It was really nice. And so for me, a very positive experience in general. So I've always loved to draw, and like the best way for me to kind of express myself as a person, especially when I have a lot of emotions going on, is just to draw it out. I actually started to think about birds that I could draw to kind of summarize my stay at Palo pretty early on in the season, and I actually did a piece with a bunch of acorn woodpeckers on a branch, and that as I was drawing that, I kind of realized that I wouldn't be able to find one species that would be like the Palo drawing that I wanted to create. And eventually I decided that the only way that I was going to achieve what I wanted to was by drawing everything, which is kind of crazy. A lot of people told me that, but it's just insane. Yeah, so I had several goals that I kind of was hoping to get across with this drawing. Like I said, I wanted to summarize the entire experience that I had there. I was there for almost 8 months, so a huge stretch of time. I was there from the spring migration through a breeding season and like the beginning of a fall migration as well. So huge in terms of like birds coming through the area. So sharing that experience and also showing others like kind of what I did and talk about Palo and conservation and kind of the overlap of that, kind of what we're doing right now. So this is perfect.
Yay.
And so on a more personal level as well, I felt like I needed some kind of transition from being at Palomarin to like life after Palo, because I tend to be very emotional and I didn't feel like I could really just leave Palo and start my next job elsewhere and just not really think about it anymore. And this was also a way for me to say thank you to everyone that I worked with, because I would be sharing this on my Instagram page as well. And I was hoping maybe they could see it and see how much I enjoyed my time there. And then, yeah, moving on to the process. Like I said, a lot of people told me this was a little bit crazy to tackle so many birds in one drawing. This was by far the biggest project I've done to date. So I've done like bigger pieces, like size-wise in acrylics, but with the amount of stuff that went into it, this was definitely the most labor intensive and had the most detail in it. I chose to use soft pastels, which is always my medium of choice. I feel like I can get all the colors that I need. I need to get like the right amount of blending, but I personally don't feel like I get with other mediums very well. However, pastels are not really meant for this kind of work. They're not really designed to do like detailed illustrative work.
The detail.
They have like a little example. This is what a pastel stick looks like. So it's not like a nice edge that you can use to create like nice details here and there. So they're more used to like a painterly effect usually. But I decided to ignore that.
So how did you get that small detail then? Yeah, do tell.
Breaking pieces of the pastel sticks often works, and also they have like harder pastel pencils which you can use to get some of the details. Somehow worked itself out.
Yes, it did.
It definitely, there's a lot of risk with pastels, like parts of it smudging as you're working. So I always work from like the top left corner to the bottom right, so that as I'm right-handed, I kind of minimize the chance of smudging everything. Because I never use any kind of fixative. And yeah, so the piece is 27.5 by 39.5 inches, so it's pretty big. It took about 5 months from the start to completion, and sort of getting to more like process of it. I started off doing like a digital sketch of a piece using Krita, just like a free software for digital artists.
Oh,
And I'd never really used that process before, but I wanted to kind of sketch things out and be able to move everything around as needed because I had no idea what this piece was going to look like when I first started it. I just started drawing the birds and moving them around as necessary, and then I filled in all the vegetation around it. And so from there, I transferred that with a grid onto a big piece of paper. And then with some transfer paper, then put that onto the final pastel mat, which is mounted on a board. And then just working one bird at a time, one plant at a time. And I also shared the daily bird on my Instagram page. So each day I would share a different species that I've been working on and telling a little bit about it as well.
that was so cool to watch the process unfold. And I encourage everybody to check out Larissa's Instagram page. We'll throw a link in the chat towards the end of the program today, so you can go over there and follow her and see the process in action. Well, that's adds so much depth to the piece already to hear the inspiration and the process. And what a beautiful way to kind of honor that transition. These field positions are very intensive. You're living, working, breathing the birds and the science, and then to leave I can understand that emotional aspect to it. And that's really neat to hear that you used art, your artistic process to honor that transition, and then to also thank the folks that you worked with at Palomarin. That's really beautiful. We had one quick question from Facebook come in while you were talking about your process. Natasha wanted to know, did you use oil pastels?
No, these are soft pastels, so it's almost like a chalky consistency.
Ah, okay. Great. Sweet. So the next question I have for you is sort of about how your art and your science brain kind of work together, and how they interrelate with each other in your process as a scientist and as an artist. So can you tell us a little bit about how your art informs the science that you're doing, and then how the science that you're doing informs your art, and how that sort of works with you in your journey?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked this question because I've been thinking about that a lot in the last few months. So from how like art inspires the science, actually let me backtrack for a moment. So like a couple of years ago, I was still kind of thinking that I had to choose between whether I wanted to be an artist or continue with biology. And I didn't realize that the two can kind of connect. And I always thought that they were very separate because like in high school, they have like the hard sciences, and then they have like the creative people. And there was not really any room for like putting those two together. It's almost frowned upon, I feel like. Um,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, I didn't realize that was a thing. And I was mostly just drawing things that I liked, just like animals that I liked, like maybe, oh, there's a cat, so I'll draw a cat. I used a lot of reference pictures that, either my family or friends took, or just pictures of the internet that were mostly just copies, and I would just invent a little bit of a background for it. But there was not really a lot of depth to them because of that, because we were not related to personal experience in any way. But then once I started doing like field jobs, I kind of started using those personal experiences a lot more. And I feel like that really put a new layer onto my drawings in a way that, like an emotional, personal layer to it.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of when I guess that was like a year and a half ago, approximately. That yeah, I started kind of using this science to inform my art, and then also realized that I'm kind of looking at the science a little bit differently.
Hmm.
Um, so when you use like the things that you work with, like for me, that's birds. When you use that to inform your art, I feel like that also changes how you look at things. Like you pay more attention to colors and shapes and textures in a way that normally maybe you wouldn't. So for example, color distinctions, like if you can't quite decide, is that like a yellow or is that like a yellowish green? And I oftentimes catch myself thinking about it in terms of how I would mix paint. Would I add a little bit of green to it? And if yes, then that must have a tinge of green, even though maybe you wouldn't really describe the color as green, you know? Um, and then also paying attention to things in branding, like the way the feathers overlap. Like I noticed that on the wings, most of the feathers overlap in a certain direction, but then the next layer above that, they overlap in the other direction. And I didn't realize that until I started drawing them.
Huh.
And then I started paying attention to every single bird that I came across. I'm like, yeah, they're all the same. This is so cool. And then I was reading about it later on, like that's a thing. And then also nature journaling. I noticed, well, I started doing that about a year ago. And I got the Law's Guide to Nature Journaling. If anyone's heard of that, it's a
So
fantastic
we've got
book.
some nature
And
journalers in the audience today here that are part
it's
of the Zombie
phenomenal.
Laws Club. Yeah.
Yeah, so I started doing that, and I guess I realized that a big part of nature journaling is also asking questions. And so you're drawing the thing in front of you and kind of noticing all the little details, like maybe this part of the leaf has like some little hairs on it, but the other part doesn't. And then you start to question, well, why is it there, not on the other part of the leaf? And then you could just go down a rabbit hole, honestly. And I actually started applying that to like readings as well. So I come across something interesting, like, well, why is it like that? Or what if it's a little bit different in other species? Like what influences that? So it's really improved my ability to ask questions too, like
Wow.
scientific questions that I want to answer. And then of course, like how the science inspires the art. Like I said before, like using my experiences in the field to um inspire like what I choose to draw, which right now is mostly birds. Um, I try to keep them like more or less scientifically accurate, like in terms of anatomy or behavior or kind of the habitat that they're in. I guess for a palo piece, it's a little bit different because everything's just mashed together. But if it's just like a species or two, then you can kind of pay more attention to that.
Well, you seem to be pretty accurate in your Palo piece too. Yeah. Amazing. So yeah, that I loved how you described just how both of the experiences sort of interweave and deepen each other. The art kind of deepens your powers of observation, your ability to ask questions, and that's core to science. The curiosity piece, the exploration piece, that's really at the heart of science. And and adding your kind of in the field emotional experience of doing the science to your art sounds really wonderful. People are anxious to see the full piece. We have a question from Anne in the crowd. Can we see the full art piece to understand what size it is? And I think we'll jump to that, just jumping to you sort of walking us through the piece, and maybe sharing who's there and maybe why they're there. You sort of shared a little bit about why they're there already, given your time there, but maybe a little bit more there, and maybe some things we might not notice right at first about the piece. So I'm going to share my screen, and after I stop sharing, you walk us through, maybe you can show us the framed piece too, after we kind of walk through it, so people can see the physical piece as well. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Hopefully, here we go. I had it here before. Let's see. Thanks for your patience, everybody. I'm going to just make sure that I have a nice view for you. Right. I'm not seeing what I saw before. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and share this normal screen here. There we go. Okay,
Nice.
so here's the full piece. So yeah, go
Great.
ahead and give us the overview of who's in this piece and why. And I'll zoom in as you direct me.
Great. Yeah, it looks like it's a little bit cut off on the bottom, but all the birds are in it. It's just
Okay,
like the fox sparrow is a little cut off on the bottom, but I think people will get the gist.
okay,
Um, but yeah, so yeah, this is the full piece, and included are all 78 species that we caught and banded at the Palomarin Field Station. I was at the station from, I think, February 14th until October 5th, approximately, give or take a couple of days. And yeah, so like I said before, that includes like the spring migration, the breeding season, and the very early part of the fall as well. So there's one bird of each species. There are no duplicates of any kind, so this is everyone. I included males and females, so like a good mix of them, depending on what we caught also. For some birds, actually a lot of birds, we just caught like one of each species, and so whatever we caught is on there, whatever we had the picture of. Um, and then I also had birds of different age classes. So some of them are juveniles, and looking at them, if you are familiar with the characteristics that you look for, you will be able to tell if it's a juvenile or not. So some examples of that are like the Cooper's hawk it's like right in the middle at the very top. It's nice streaky hawk, very typical hatchier bird, a juvenile. We've also got a chipping sparrow at the bottom. It's like right underneath the flying downy woodpecker. There's another very, very nice looking baby bird. And then yeah, so I mean all the birds are like you probably have to look through to find them all, but they're not hidden in any way. They're just kind of there out in the open. But there are some parts of it that maybe you wouldn't notice right away, or even if you know they were there, you might struggle to find them. And the main one for that is actually the flying downy woodpecker. And the reason I included that specifically is because at Palo we do a capstone project. And mine was illustrating the moult limits of woodpeckers. And so most woodpeckers are all the same, and they have what we call moult limits, which are just basically color differences between generations of feather that allow us to age the bird. So with woodpeckers, they have like a weird pattern in which they replace their feathers every year. And it was very difficult for us to kind of understand everything that was written down about them. And so I decided to just draw it out in a picture. And this was like my summary of that project. And this bird can be aged as a third year based on a moult limit in the primary coverts, which if people can see the hand moving around, it's like pointing to where that color difference is. So that's like the main thing that I wanted to include. And then another one is the Swainson's thrush, which is like in the bottom left, which has these little pale spots on the ends of some of its feathers that also allow us to age it as a hatchier bird or a juvenile of that year. Yeah, and then all the plants have different what we call phenophases included as well. So part of what we do at Palomarin is monitoring certain plants and their changes throughout the year. So we write down when they start having like breaking leaf buds or young leaves, or when they start flowering in the summertime, or when they start to have seeds, and we monitor that throughout the season. And I included most of those things we look for in the plants, and some of them are very hidden. So probably the most noticeable will be the blackberry bush in the bottom left corner. So it's a huge bush. There are some nice flowers, some nice berries. There's some ripe berries, some unripe berries. And if you kind of dig through the leaves a little bit, you'll find some breaking leaf buds. And Yeah, so the one plant that I didn't really do this with is the Douglas fir in the top right. And the reason for that is because I just really struggled enormously with that piece of the drawing. I had never drawn a coniferous tree before. I had no idea how it worked and just couldn't wait for that part to be over, to be honest.
You did a pretty good job with that cone over there with the little mouse tail sticking out right here.
I appreciate that. I think, yeah, the needles were a nightmare. I almost gave up on them.
Oh, with the
But yeah,
pastels too, right?
we do have the pollen cones, like actually right where your hand is, there's some pollen cones that I put in there. I didn't put any flowers in. But again, like yeah, the cones are there at least for a chickadee to have a feast. But yeah, so there's a lot of these little things included in the piece that you probably would struggle to see unless you actually have the physical drawing in front of you. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for walking us through that piece. There's so much there. You did so much work.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Remind us how long it took you to create the piece again?
Yeah, it took about 5 months, but it was really only like a 2, 3 hours that I was working each day,
Mhm.
mostly because I had to entertain my dog and he kept stealing my pencils.
Okay, got you. Well, I think I'm going to transition to our last question, and then we're going to open up to Q&A. The last question I want to ask you is about kind of where you're at in your career path. You sort of mentioned a little bit about that already, but can you kind of share with us where you're at in your career path as a scientist and an artist, and then where you sort of see yourself going in the future?
Yeah, definitely I still consider myself very early career for both of them. For science, I at least have like a little bit of a direction of where I'm going at this point. I'm still doing a lot of these seasonal jobs, like going to a Farallon soon and um maybe a little bit more banding after Palo, who knows. I'm also trying to find a grad position right now,
Mm.
um, to get a master's degree. And my goal is to kind of help run a field station more long term and also be able to teach people about banding and conservation. I found out at Palo and also at my job in Alaska that I really, really enjoy teaching people. So that I definitely want to do more with that. And then for the art side of things, this piece definitely kind of changed my direction of
Hmm.
my drawings a lot. So I used to do a lot of pet portraits, and that was kind of the main thing I was focusing on. Like that's like something you can sell. You know, people just come to you with an order, and that like you're already guaranteed to have sold that piece because it's a commission. Um, which was great. It was really, really nice to be able to work on my technical skills for sure. Um, but that's also not really what I want to be working on long term. So I'll probably still be doing some commissions here and there, but I really want to focus more on my bird drawings for other wildlife, but mostly birds. Um, so yeah, and also like I mentioned earlier, this kind of like using field work as inspiration allows me to create more meaningful work that hopefully like it helps educate people a little bit too about the environment, about the stories that the piece can tell about a certain species or an ecosystem. And I really want that to be kind of use to people, that they can get something out of it. And yeah, so that's more like from a stylistic standpoint. I guess business wise, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do with it yet. Just kind of continue as I am for a while and hopefully start to sell some work a little bit here and there. Um, maybe get into a gallery. I'm kind of trying to look around for some galleries that maybe would match my kind of style.
Yeah.
it's definitely tricky trying to find that and
Mhm.
figuring out how to communicate with galleries and whatnot. But yeah, that's still very much up in the air. So
That sounds great. Well, there could be some experienced artists in the audience today that might have some advice for you.
yeah, if anyone has
Connected,
advice,
yeah.
please. I'm
Yeah,
all
please
ears.
follow up with Larissa afterwards via various avenues, email, Instagram, and let her know how she can connect with galleries. And we will do our best to support you at Point Blue as well with that.
Thank you.
Um, well, thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared so far. This has been really wonderful to learn about, just deepening the background behind this amazing piece. So we're going to transition into Q&A now. And I see 6 questions here in the Q&A. Awesome. Okay, so we'll start with a question from Christine Walker. She says, how stunning. Is there a way we can purchase a print? Can't wait to
Yes.
see how you interpret the farallons. Me too, Christine. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Prints, so I have a website which Dishka will provide some links to as well. And so everything can be linked to from my website. And all my prints are available on Saatchi Art, which is like a print on demand website. They're very high quality prints. I actually just got my test print for this piece and it looks fantastic. The colors are perfect, the details there. Super happy with that. So yeah, definitely links will be provided for that.
Nice. Yes, I just put a link in the chat to Larissa's webpage that tells you more about the piece, gives you a species list, because I know a lot of you are wondering what all those species are. And then it gives you a link to purchase prints. And there's also an option to purchase the original piece, which Larissa has already framed. And she has agreed to donate 40% of the sales of that original piece back to Point Blue to support our conservation. So we really appreciate that, Larissa. That's amazing. Very generous of you. So yeah, take a look at that link in the chat. And we will be sharing that link out on Facebook too. So the next question is from, is this a question or a comment? Let's see, from Leo. He says, do not give up the art for science. He has a friend who's very talented painter, who's now director of the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle, Dr. Alejandro Grajal. And he thinks, like you, he's still trying to answer that question that I just asked. So the kind of the relationship between the two. So Leo's advice is don't give up either. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Leo.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
And let's see. So there was a question from Facebook that came in from Mark D. What colors did you mix to get the color for the belly of the rentit? Such a hard color to get right, and you nailed
oh my.
it. That makes a lot come from Mark D. Yeah.
Let me look at the piece of that. Yeah, that was actually I used a lot of burnt and raw umber. And to get the highlights on I think I probably used some dark blue and black to put like a base layer of the shadows and then put the darker browns on top. And then I actually used pink to highlight the feathers. Like a very light pink color, just kind of tends to bring out the browns a little bit more.
Aha. So tricky mix there. Yeah. Well, good for other artists to know that in the crowd, how you nail the rentit belly color.
Very specific question.
And so, yes, we had a question from Anne about the reproduction of the fabulous poster. And so you have that link now. You can get a print on Saatchi. When you purchase the prints, you're supporting Larissa. So please do that. And when you purchase the original, you're supporting both Larissa and Point Blue. So only the purchase of the original piece, a percentage of that comes back to Point Blue. So thanks for asking so we could clarify that for everybody else. And Maggie is asking, she says, this is amazing. So she, she really loves the piece. And she wants to know which bird or birds were your favorite to draw?
Oh, good question. I think I think about that for a moment. I really enjoyed the rented. Partly because it's almost like a mascot of Palo in a way. Um, so that was a really fun one to do, and they have so much personality. So just trying to capture that, I think, was a lot of fun for me. I also really enjoyed doing the white crowned sparrow because the reference picture I took for that one, this was at Abbott's Lagoon.
Hmm.
I just had one singing on a nice fence post. I'm like, that's perfect. Um, and the way the lighting was in the photo, it just created all these beautiful shadows, like where the individual feathers were kind of highlighted instead of just being like this plain grayish belly.
Mm-hmm.
Like actually got to create a little bit of texture in there. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. The detail that you get to just dive into with this project is so amazing. Now I want to go out and draw birds.
You should.
And look at them in different
You
lights.
should.
I really should. Maybe you can do a workshop for us when you get back to Palo. Um, all right, we've got a question from Renee Cormier, who is an integral part of our Palomarin Field Station. Hey, Renee. So she says, it's so great to have Larissa at Palo, and we're looking forward to working with her again this winter. Is there a species or group of birds that you haven't drawn yet that you're excited to draw?
Um, I can't say for like a group of birds, but one species that I really wanted to draw is a Canada jay, which we don't have at Palomarin, but we caught one up in Alaska, and I was like mentally kind of planning the potential drawing for this one.
A
They're so
Canada
beautiful.
jay.
They're so fluffy.
Ah,
And they act a lot like chickadees. They're like little dinosaurs. They have so much personality.
huh.
And it's those kind of birds that are just really fun to kind of try to capture.
Try to capture that personality in the drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
point.
So these
I'd like to
feisty
see
little
a
birds,
Canada
those are a
jay.
lot of fun.
Yeah, wow. I'm gonna have to look that one up. Um, great question, Renee. And Anne loves the idea of you doing a workshop for us when you get back to Palo. So
It will be fun.
yeah, yeah, that would be fun. I haven't done too much with pastels, so that would be fun a little bit, but
I know they tend to be a little daunting for people just starting out. I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
way back in like high school art class, or maybe it was middle school, something like that. We got to work with pastels, but we weren't told how to use them at all. And everyone in the class was complaining about them, like, when can we be done with these stupid chalk things?
It's funny,
So
it's sort of like crayons, which we use when we're little, right? They
yeah,
should
yeah,
be fun to
kind of.
use.
I guess it's more like oil pastels, but a bit more like like crayons. But yeah, these are just chalk and smudgy, and they get all over the place.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. But you've taken a liking to them.
Yes, yeah, they're my favorite.
Nice. All right, so we have another question from Joe. He says your work is beautiful, and he's wondering, did you use your camera to capture birds before they were released, or were these from pictures in the wild?
Mix of both. So a lot of like birds that I had personally handled, I usually had pictures of them in the hand. So with those, it was nice because I could get like the exact angles that I wanted, or a specific lighting, or maybe I knew I wanted to draw a bird in flight, so I was photograph the open wing or something like that. Um, but for others, I just photographed them in the wild and liked the pose that I had. Some of them, yeah, I mean, most of them were from the Point Reyes area, but a couple of them I actually photographed later when I had left Palo already. So like the pileated woodpecker I actually photographed in the Sierras. I went on a little road trip after Palo and took a good number of pictures of birds that I also kind of used as a reference. And also not all of them had like a single reference. So a
Hmm.
lot of them I'd use like 3, 4, maybe more pictures just to
Oh,
kind of
interesting.
put them all together.
Wow. That's a talent all in itself, using multiple pictures to create one bird. That's way beyond me.
You just do look at like parts of a bird at a time and see how they kind of fit together.
Yeah, because you gotta capture that character in there, right? Just one
Mhm.
photograph's not gonna do it, right?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of times it won't.
Yeah. Just a comment from Julie. She says, "Thank you for sharing your beautiful work. It's sure to inspire conservation." So that's lovely. Thanks for sharing that, Julie.
It's great.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in from Facebook or from our Zoom audience. So I think we might end a little bit early today. But I wanted folks to get a chance to see the actual original piece that's framed. Do you happen to have that with you?
Yeah, I have it here behind. Let me unblur my background. I
Yeah.
apologize. This is my childhood bedroom over here.
Oh, it's
But yeah, so this is the drawing I have behind me. You can kind of get a sense of the size that I'm like standing up
oh yeah. So that's
on
yeah.
the chair here. So it's quite large. It's got a beautiful frame. Yeah, it got custom framed. Just got it back a little while ago. So yeah.
Huh.
So
So that, I mean, that almost looks like the birds are just about life size.
yeah, they are. Most of them are like approximately life size, slightly smaller.
Yeah,
So we put
that's
this
neat.
back here. I don't know if you guys can hear me when I'm so far away from the
Oh yeah, I
computer.
can hear you great.
But yeah, so to get the proportions, I actually a lot of times use like my hand, like in relation to the bird I was drawing to see if it was like approximately the right size. And everything's just scaled down slightly. And then a couple of them, like the band-tailed pigeon and the northern flicker, they didn't quite make it as large as they should be, but it's close.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
You do have artistic license still. Yeah. Awesome. Well, oh, Christopher Reiger says, wow, what a great scale. So yeah, that is impressive. I think that's the first time I've seen you kind of stand next to it like that. It's a great size to just immerse yourself in all of those birds and plants. And I can't wait to just look more closely at the drawing and look at all the phenophases of the native plants as well. That's a really cool aspect of the work.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no other questions from our audience today, I think I'm going to transition to closing. And I just want to thank everybody for joining. Really appreciate you joining this art and science program. We hope to have more of these programs. We recently had a science illustration intern at Point Blue. And we're looking to identify more funding to support positions that merge art and science all in one, and to support artists like Larissa and spotlight the work that she does and others do too. And I know there's a few artists in our audience today that we're collaborating with, and we want to support your work. And we're all working towards the same goal to increase the impact of conservation and engage more people in solutions to climate change and biodiversity. So we're all in this together, and this is a really exciting area that I'm personally passionate about supporting at Point Blue, is bringing in this creative element. It's just so powerful, so engaging. And it gets us out and engaged and connected with these species in these habitats like no other method can. So we've seen a little bit about how that can happen through Larissa's process. So if you want to follow Larissa on Instagram, I'm going to pop her Instagram link in the chat. You can find her there, and then you can see the whole process from start to finish of this Birds of Palomarin piece on her Instagram page. And you can see all the great stuff that she continues to create. And Larissa, I too cannot wait to see what you create from your Farallons experience. That is such an amazing place.
Yeah.
tons of
I'm looking forward to
information.
it.
Yeah, with lots of different taxa. You got seals and sea lions out there. You got salamanders. Maybe you'll run into a cave cricket. I don't know. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, we always appreciate support from folks. I'm going to pop our donation link into the chat here. So if you're interested in supporting the art and science effort and any other conservation effort that's going on at Point Blue, your individual support really packs a punch in terms of our innovation and what we can do with our science and art and science efforts. So popping that in the chat. Yeah, I'm going to pop the link back into the chat of where you can see this piece, where you can get prints, how you can purchase the original piece, and then learn more about the piece itself. So with that, I want to thank everybody again. And Larissa, I'm excited to see what comes next with you. Please do keep us in the loop. I'm going to be following you on Instagram, and hopefully I'll be able to see you out at the Palomarin Field Station again as well.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on here today. I really enjoyed getting to talk to all of you about this. So it was great.
Awesome. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.